Hey, what's up? This is Harry Wagner from Harry Situations, and today I want to talk to you about the pros and cons of having one vehicle that can do everything or having multiple single-purpose vehicles. Now, most of my vehicles are single-purpose. You know, the Tracker is an awesome Rockcrawler, but with a 4-cylinder and 150 horsepower, it's not really going fast on the road or in the desert. My Ford, big truck, got bypass shocks, pretty awesome, but with a 40-inch spare in the bed, there's not a lot of room to go overlanding or go on long trips. My Ram is great for that with a sliding camper, but it weighs 11,000 pounds. You're not really taking it off-road much. Orie here has a truck that can do it all. I think you have to make a lot of compromises when you're trying to do everything with one vehicle, but you seem to have the secret sauce.
Yes, I tried anyway. It's definitely a give and take situation with some things. You get pluses and minuses with any build really, but I wanted this to be able to travel around the country, be my general toy, so I could just do whatever on the weekend with it, whether it's take the family camping or I want to go to the dunes and go jump it, maybe go rock crawling with my friends, you know? It's been great for all that. I definitely lost a few amenities doing that, but generally it's been awesome, so.
Did you get it right the first time, or how many trucks have you had before this one?
Oh, so 1 or 2 serious rock crawlers before this, and they were very basic, leaf sprung. I had them for years, like 5 to 10 years or something before I even attempted this. So I had a lot of time to sit down and think about what I wanted. It wasn't something I just was like, oh, I'm gonna go buy a Tacoma and make it this something cool and it's gonna do everything. It kind of just came together over time, and I learned what I really wanted out of a car versus and what I could get. Because sometimes you want a whole bunch and you're not really gonna get everything you want when you build a truck.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing is, I mean, it's easy to spend money too, right? You did all the fabrication work on this yourself?
A good percentage of it. I used to work at WFO Concepts, and the guys there, we built the suspension and the first stage of the truck when it was orange before I did the paint and the most of the tube work. And then I brought it home when I started working for myself, and I built the rest of it, the internal cage, bumper to bumper, paint, all that kind of stuff. And then lots of add-ons, the engine and other accessories, so.
And how long have you had this truck?
I think we finished building it at the end of 2016, 2017 sometime. So, and then I only bought it 3 months before I started building it, so.
So you had a vision in mind when you bought this truck?
I had a definite plan planned out, and it definitely cost me my other rock crawler, my tow rig, and I knew what I was getting rid of and what I was gonna have to build this to do. So I sold my nice Dodge tow rig, my nice Toyota 4Runner Rockcrawler. That was great. It was still daily drivable, but it was a 4-cylinder and it was like torture to drive on long dimes, you know? The Dodge was nice, but the headache of bringing everything every time kind of got to me. So I knew I wanted something I could just get in and take it wherever.
And you live in Nevada City, right? So, I mean, there's tons of dirt roads and you're not far from Fordyce, so you have all sorts of wheeling without your back door.
Yeah, we got a ton of rock crawling and, you know, just playing around in the dirt, in the woods kind of stuff to do. And then I do really like to come to the desert, which is what made me build this in between rock crawling and desert. Like, I wanted to go fast overall, but I can't give up rock crawling either. Kind of having my cake, eat it too kind of guy.
Sure. And most people don't think of a solid axle as being something to go fast, but you don't see a lot of trucks on 40s that have IFS. I mean, you're definitely taxing things at that point.
Yeah, and the thing about the solid axle is I work around a lot of rock crawlers and Ultra 4 when I was working at WFO. And I always saw that as kind of like the next stage. Trophy trucks were cool, but they were a little boring to watch at times. They're just going really fast and straight through the desert. It's awesome, but I wanted to see more carnage, more wheelies, more jumping off of stuff. And Ultra 4 is where that comes in. You just... They drive it pedal to metal, jumping off of stuff, and then they get in the desert and they can still do 100. With a solid axle, granted the IFS technology has came a long way in the last 5 years since before I built this truck, and that is catching up finally, but the solid axle is still so tried and true and strong, you just can't go wrong with it. It just takes all the abuse and it keeps going. When the IFS, you're limited by the diff, rack and pinion, a whole bunch of things on the Tacoma that don't really go together when you're trying to go fast and hit rocks. All that kind of stuff blows apart. Now there's people making stuff that's stronger, but again, when I built the truck, none of that was available, and it was kind of get a couple recipes to build it, and that was it.
Sure. Well, and I think a lot of people might not realize when we talk about Ultra 4 and independent suspension, those are not junkyard parts. They're not off-the-shelf parts. I mean, they're exotic, super expensive. You can have 50 grand tied up in the front end of an IFS Ultra 4 car easily.
Yeah, like it's nothing really. And in this, it's probably less than half of that, but that was over a long time putting energy into it and parts. It wasn't all in one chunk. And building them, I thought about building an IFS truck when this first was being cut apart, and I was gonna stretch it forward, but I just couldn't get over the front differential and then buying all the aftermarket IFS parts like an Ultra 4 would have to put under this. At the time, they were even more than they are now, and they weren't as well thought out. People were still running 14 bolts and 60 center sections, which were blowing up all the time, and no one really had the recipe. Now it's a little more ironed out, and the Ultra 4s got really nice, strong front diffs, 10 inches everyone's running now, with SolidWorks thirds, and they've got all the issues figured out. So you could definitely step it up if you did it again, or I did it again, you know.
But now you've started building trucks like this for people, right? You have a bunch of friends who have seen how your truck works in the rocks, in the desert, and they said, hey, will you build me one of those?
Yes, that happens constantly. Everybody sees it and they really want this style truck, but I kind of have to talk them down a little bit because they don't realize what this entails. This is a lot of maintenance, a lot of noises. It is a lot of work to build on top of it. To straight axle a truck and put 40s on it is one thing. To do all this shock work and suspension and cage work, engine work, to try to make this work the way it does, I have years into it to really like fine tune it. It only took 3 months to build initially, but it's been just ever ongoing process.
And how many additional trucks have you built now that you kind of have a formula?
Straight axle Tacomas and 4Runners, I have a few dozen easy, and just random other trucks, Toyota straight axle ones, I build every week. I try to build something, so I could not give you a straight number of how many I've built, but a lot.
Now, I'm a little disappointed you didn't have the rooftop tent on the back today. Everyone knows how much I love rooftop tents.
I know.
And you actually drove this truck across the country with your wife, right?
Yeah, we did. That was a pretty cool experience. I don't know if she'd do it many more times, but I had fun and it worked out pretty good. I do like the tent for certain things, mainly for my wife and some amenities, but it is just a hassle to take on and off.
Sure.
They're heavy, and on my truck, you know, I can feel the maneuverability. It's less, you know, it's more pretty good amount of weight over the back end. So
yeah,
I put it on there for camping and family stuff. And when I go party with the boys, I'll sleep in a tent or rent an RV or do something else, you know?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And while rooftop tents might not be my favorite, Nitto tires are. This video is actually brought to you by Nitto tires. If you like what we're doing here, please subscribe to the Driving Line channel. I love the trail grapplers. You have 40s on this. I've got 37s on my Jeep. I've got 42s on my Ford. I think this tire, as you have demonstrated, does it all. I mean, it goes down the road great. They're great in the desert. They rock crawl amazing.
They definitely do. I really like these tires. They are awesome. I'm surprised. For most 40-inch tires, I've built a lot of rigs. Everybody has a tire they want. And I've built tires with other people's, or rigs with other people's tire that they want on there. And a real aggressive tire looks cool in a picture. But let me tell you, driving down the road, it makes a big difference. And some of those chunky tires just are horrible to drive on. The noise, they wear out fast. And these things are smooth down the road. You don't have to worry about any crazy off balancing. There's no weights on these things at all. And I could definitely do 100 and they don't do anything. They don't freak out or shake. So real impressed with the design of the tire. And then the overall thickness of it is great too. It's, you know, slashes and cuts don't really get to it very easily. So real confident in the tire anyway.
Yeah. So what drivetrain do you have in this truck?
It's still got a factory 4-liter, the V6. It does have quite a bit of aftermarket parts on it, a Magnuson supercharger. Piggybacked ECU and injectors, all the fuel system, exhaust, a couple cam gears and other odds and ends just to like stretch out the power as much as I can out of that 4-liter. Really milking it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what's behind that?
It's a 6-speed manual transmission with a 4-speed Atlas transfer case. So those are 6 speeds okay. It's kind of annoying. but I just love the manual, and I'm
Sure.
old school Toyota guy deep down. I love rowing gears in them and getting on the hill and, you know, using my clutch and everything. It's just more fun for me than trying to rock crawl with an automatic, even though it is much easier. I just prefer a manual. Like,
Yeah, I feel the same way.
yeah.
And I imagine the 4-speed Atlas then, I mean, this is a kind of a wide truck, kind of long. So, I mean, you do trails like the Rubicon and Fordyce all the time, and
Yeah.
it's still pretty clean. Is that gearing the secret to keeping everything clean in technical rock crawling?
Definitely having the 4-speed helps because I can reduce it down pretty low. I forget what the overall ratio is in it, but the thing crawls like you wouldn't believe. And with these tires, it doesn't slip at all. So, you know, I've taken it on Barrett and a lot of tight trails that you wouldn't want to take something usually with fiberglass fenders,
Right.
or full with axles on, but it goes through it fine. I'm just able to put it in low enough gear to just crawl around pretty much anything.
And I find that if you can stay on your line and kind of crawl, it's way easier than, you know, if you're using momentum, you might bounce and then you slide over or move around. And
Yeah.
when, in my experience, I end up with body damage.
And that's where all the body damage on it, the cracked fenders, has came from. Usually my impatience, not anything to do with the trail. Because I've got a couple from Rubicon, a couple from Fordyce, and a lot of it's, oh, I'm trying to go around someone stuck. There's this tree, I'm getting impatient. I just gun it, slide into something.
Sure.
But overall, it stayed pretty clean. Those are the fenders that have been on it since I bought it or built it. And I haven't repaired them once yet. So
Wow.
they're hanging in pretty good. I thought it was going to be a big issue. Trevor actually talked me into it when we were building it. He's like, oh, it would be so cool to have a solid axle with fiberglass fenders. I was like, I didn't like the idea.
Yeah.
And then we were talking about it more and more, and then I ended up chopping the back of the truck off to do trailing arms when that wasn't the plan at all. And it just kind of escalated one thing after the other, and I got fiberglass, which has helped driving around the country. I get waved at from cops, and people are usually like happy to see it. Doesn't have tires sticking out a mile.
Right, flinging things.
Things, even though I have other rigs that are like that, and I enjoy that kind of wheeling.
Sure.
This is a lot less drama on the road. I'm driving down through Kansas, and there's not a rock crawler in sight. I'm just waiting to get yelled at because I've got 40-inch tires and a weird green rim Toyota in the middle of Kansas, and the cops are just waving at me, smiling and wave. So far, every state's been happy. I don't know about every state really, but
So far.
yeah, so far.
And you mentioned the trailing arm, so tell us, what's the secret? We talked about the gearing for rock crawling. How is this truck able to go so fast through the desert? Most people don't think of a solid axle as being, you know, able to go smash through whoops, jump through the air.
Yeah, a lot of it is the back half, the trailing arm setup. That gives us the most travel for the size shock that's in it. Instead of mounting the shock off the axle and having that 1-to-1 ratio, I can mount it up the arm, and then you get so much more travel out of it. It's just over 21 inches of travel in the rear with a 16 and a 14-inch shock, which is low numbers for like a desert truck, but it seems to work really good in a truck like this. So you're not really going like 100 miles an hour yet in the desert, so it's been fine.
And how much travel do you get out of the front? How's the front set up?
The front's just a 1-to-1, so it's just 12 inches, which everybody with the number, they're like, oh, that's not enough until I take you for a ride. And it eats up everything somehow. It just worked right. The air bumps and the bypasses and the coilovers just all work in conjunction real well. And the truck is very low center of gravity, so I can come into stuff really hot. And I do know how to drive it. You gotta learn to drive a truck like this. You can't just plow through stuff. You have to cross up certain things, and solid axle is different driving than a IFS truck, so it's all different lines.
And did you have to cut off the front of the frame or do anything for more up travel?
No, the front of the frame is still there. There's a notch in it for the track bar, or the track bar to go up, and I think the drag link, but it's just a little bit, not much. Still all factory frame up to the very front by the radiator.
Wow.
Just cut off at the back of the cab. The limiting part on these 4-liters is the engine. The AC sits down super low, and I've gone through about 6 AC units in this and 4 different motor mount designs, with the motor mount falling down, hitting the axle, all the jumping I've done. These Toyotas have the worst motor mounts from the factory. They cave into the frame. There's a million problems with them. And so I found all those problems and went through at least a half a dozen AC compressors with my front axle smacking it. So I tried to get every bit of up travel I could. And it's to the point where if it needs any more, the engine has to go back about a foot. And It's a whole thing I'm not going to do. So.
Right, now you open up a whole nother
Yeah.
can of worms. You're better off building another truck at that point. Right?
Yeah, and I could use a taller axle or a taller shock on it, like a 16, but because of the way the width of the frame, the shocks will swing into the frame with the 3-link. So the 12 pretty much is the sweet spot. And any bigger shock, you're just going with a mud truck or you're making something tall. You're just not using it really.
83 Ricky Bobby, if you are not already following him on Instagram, you should be, because you can see all the crazy things you do, from rock crawling to jumping it through the air and everything in between.
Yeah, a little drifting now too.
Oh, drifting, nice.
Yeah, I got to get my hands in everything.
That's it for this episode of Harry's Situations. Tell me, which do you prefer? One vehicle that can do it all, or purpose-built vehicles for each application? Comment below and let us know.
Thanks for watching Driving Line. If you guys like this video, consider subscribing to our channel so you'll never miss any of the content we create here. Whether you're into trucks, Jeeps, imports, domestic vehicles, or anything in between, we are here to fuel your passion. So hit that subscribe button and we'll see you guys next time.